Hello and welcome to the Luke X podcast. I'm your host, Dan Morrice, and in this episode, I follow the story of the Rev Dave Jeal, prison chaplain, football chaplain, and now Royal Navy chaplain. In today's episode, I discover how a hardened football hooligan with a violent past became a pioneer of peace, bringing faith, hope, and love to other tough guys all over the nation. What caused such a transformation? What's Dave's story? And what can he teach this generation in this moment? Let's find out.
One of the reasons I was expelled from the school was I stabbed someone in the face with a pencil. I suppose growing up, I just never felt happy. I always felt kind of anger and resentment towards anyone and anything.
That's Dave in an interview I had with him 3 years ago on the Lockleys estate in Bristol, where Dave was the vicar. But he didn't sound like the sort of fella who would grow up to become a vicar. If anything, Dave's early life in the world of football violence was about as un-vicar-like as you could imagine.
The whole kind of football violence thing is that you are angry, you are upset. Happy people don't want to hurt people. It does take over your life. So I was constantly, if whether I was in the car, I'd be leery with people. If I was kind of walking on the street and I thought someone was being a bit unpleasant, I'd have a go back. You're just kind of bristling with unpleasantness. I'd gone to Sweden for the European Championships, and it had all kicked off with all these Swedish fans. We'd come out of the stadium and there were some England fans fighting with them on the other side of a fence. So I climbed up over the fence and I got stuck in. I punched this lad. He went down, I kicked him. We went off up the road and looted a petrol station. And then as we came back down the road, the guy was on the ground and he was unconscious, and there was people jumping on him, up and down on his head and stuff. And I went over and I was just like, what are you doing? And he said, he's Swedish. And I said, flipping leave him, you're going to kill him. And I just felt completely surrounded by evil, and I felt scared. My unpleasantness got me to the point where the girl that I was living with left me. I lost my job through the football violence because the bosses had seen me on the television doing stuff. And I had nowhere to live because I couldn't afford the flat that I was living in. I ended up with nothing. I ended up sleeping in a car or on people's floors. I hated it. I hated my life. And I think with any kind of form of addiction or whatever it is, you got to reach rock bottom, and I hit mine. I've got to say, I wasn't really I was looking for something, but I wasn't looking for God. And the last thing I was looking for was Jesus, because I absolutely hated Christians with a passion. I just thought that they were the most judgmental, unpleasant people I'd ever met in my life, until I met some that weren't, and I met Jesus, and then it all changed.
Wait, what? That's quite a change of tune. How does someone with an addiction to violence who, quote, absolutely hated Christians become someone who met Jesus? That needed some explanation.
I met someone. My mum had set up a homeless project. She'd become a Christian. I went to that, and I met a girl there who was a Christian, and I just said to her, she was quite nice actually, and I said to her, would you fancy going for a beer? And she said, not really, I'm a Christian. I said, well, that's all right, so am I. She said, I don't think you are. I said, yeah, I said, you're born in England, you're Church of England, aren't you? That's how it works. And she said, no, you have to make a decision to be a Christian. I didn't really know what she was on about, but I kind of went along with it because I wanted to get to know her a little bit better, shall we say. And she said, okay, I'll go for a drink with you if you come to church with me. So I went to church, and it was quite happy and quite clappy, and I really didn't like it at all. I felt very threatened. I didn't like the people, and they were just so friendly and nice to me, but I just wanted to be away from them. I didn't really like singing, and then this guy started speaking, and it was as though he was speaking to me. Everything he was saying, I was thinking, that's my life. But what he's talking about, that's me. And it kind of, it kind of pressed buttons inside me, and I just felt absolutely terrified. I felt something was going on in me, and I had to get out of there. So I got up and I just went, and there was a pub across the road, and I went in there. It was a rough cider pub, so I had a few pints of rough cider and went home. Later that night, the girl turned up and knocked on the door and said, well, what happened to you at church? We thought we were going for a drink. And I said, I don't like your church. I don't want to go to your church. I'm not interested. And she said, well, do you still want to go for this drink? And I said, yeah. And she said, okay, well, let's go tomorrow night. I said, great. She said, well, we've got another thing going on at church tomorrow night. Come to that and we'll go afterwards. And I said, not a chance. And she said, well, are you scared? And I said, I'm not scared. She said, well, I'll see you tomorrow. So I went. Same thing happened. I was particularly unpleasant to the people in the church. This time I was in the middle of a row and I couldn't kind of get out. And I just thought, right, okay. I could feel all these emotions coming over me. I thought, I'm going to flipping cry in a minute. I don't want these mugs to see me upset. I need to do something, but I can't get out because they're going to see. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll shut my eyes. I'll stick my hands together like that and I'll pretend I'm praying. I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what prayer was, but I thought they'd just leave me alone if I do that. And these two guys came up to me and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, fine. And he said, can we pray for you? I said, do what you want. And he said, well, what do you want? And I said, well, nothing that you've got. And one of the guys said, well, why are you upset? And I was thinking, I'm going to knock you out, mate. And he said, if you accept God, if you accept Jesus in your life will change. I said, what do I have to do? He said, just talk to him as if he's here now. So I said, all right. And it all started coming out. And I said, I want all the hate and all the anger and all the pain in my life to go. And I want to be different. And the weird thing was, I fell over, but it wasn't as though anyone pushed me over. It wasn't as though I had to fall over. I just kind of ended up on the ground. I ended up just different. I felt that something was happening inside of me and this stuff was coming out. I can't explain quite how, but when I got up, it was as though the rucksack that I carried around my whole life, just full of crap, just full of hate and pain, had been taken off me, and I didn't have to be that person anymore. And that was it, really. That was the kind of start of it.
So what do you do when all you've known your whole life is hatred and violence, and then in one dramatic experience, you leave it all behind? What happens next?
I knew almost immediately that since becoming a Christian that I had to serve God with my whole life. That was it, because I've been almost like serving the devil for so many years that I had to do that. And so I went to a church minister and I said to him, listen, can I just serve in your church? I'll do anything. I cleaned the toilets, I put the chairs out, I did the stuff just ordinary stuff.
That minister was Dave Mitchell, who leads Woodlands Church in Bristol. He saw the potential in Dave Jeal and decided to invest in his fresh start. So just like that, he invited him into his home. A couple of weeks ago, I tracked down Dave Mitchell and asked him, what was it like living with a former football hooligan? Here's what he said.
He came to live with us just after making a kind of turnaround Christian commitment. And he'd been involved in significant football violence, but also kind of low-level crime and gang stuff in Bristol. And I think when he came to live with us, he was very restless. I mean, God had moved in his life. He's been touched and changed. But, at the weekend, Dave's habit was going into town, kind of picking up a girl or, that was his old life, and being out with his mates and, in pubs and clubs. And so I think early days with Dave were kind of trying to help, in almost give a different context, not to abandon or reject his friends by any means, but also to have an alternative community so that that there was another way of living. And I think for Dave, because Dave's an adventurer, and often people who get themselves into trouble is the flip side of actually lots of adventurous spirit. And I think for Dave, he very quickly got involved with Christian ministry and became a bit of an adventurer for God. I can remember someone brought a young 16-year-old round to our church, and who had been made homeless, and his mum had kicked him out because of his drug habit. And basically, they brought him to church thinking, well, we could take him in. And we did take him in. He kind of came back here. But Dave was really instrumental, early doors, just kind of giving some support to him, helping us pay off the drug debt that he owed, that he was in really big trouble for, and seeing his life turned around. And actually, that young lad's life really turned around. When he left here, we got him into a flat. He ended up, working for an estate agent, actually, and actually, I think, and going to Hong Kong and having a successful life, but a massive turnaround. But Dave was always like that, kind of a bit really up for the challenge, up for the adventure. And so for us, it wasn't just that we were helping Dave, but Dave was bringing some of that kind of courageous, adventurous spirit into community life too, so that helping us care for people, reach out to people who needed that kind of connection.
The Mitchells' community house was the place that Dave Jeal needed to help turn his life around. They looked beyond his violent past and saw a man of loyalty and love, someone who it seems God had given a second chance to, and he wanted to nurture that, to harness his adventurous spirit for good.
I remember, one time when Dave, we had a young guy living with us as well, who'd kind of been rescued a little bit. He was living in Barton Hill in a flat. Things were not going well for him, financially, and in some of the kind of low-level kind of drugs and stuff. And I suppose we kind of scooped him up, and he came to live here. And I remember my neighbour phoning me up and saying, "Oh, Dave, just to warn, there's a couple of dodgy-looking guys around your house." So we sent Dave Jeal and this lad Marcus out to kind of just check it out. Turns out they were the dodgy-looking guys.
As the Mitchells gave their time and energy to supporting Dave Jeal, he in turn gave himself to loving and serving other tough guys who needed a second chance. It started with ones and twos, but before long, Dave was itching to serve as many people as he could.
And then I had the chance to work in a prison, just doing some kind of volunteer stuff. And I worked there for a couple of years. And then the governor of the prison said, "We'd like to take you on full-time as a chaplain." While I was there, I was aware that this building that we're in now was empty. It'd been given to a church in Bristol in trust, and I wanted to reopen it for the people of the estate. Then we were given the building, so we've been open 12 years this past weekend, and it's been hard, but it's been, worthwhile. We share what we have with our community, and that's what it's all about, really. It's about kind of loving people and looking out for them. And these are my people, they're my community, they're people that I love and want to look after, really.
In his desire to care for the people of his community, Dave ended up back at his beloved Bristol Rovers football ground. At a stadium he'd previously been banned from, he now came back, not as a hooligan, but as a chaplain.
So I'm the chaplain at Bristol Rovers. I've been chaplain there probably about 8 or 9 years now. Which is just a dream job, really, from being banned. So I had a meeting with the old chairman and owner, and said, "Look, I really appreciate you offering me this, but, I've been banned, I've kind of said, yeah, we know all about you." And I'd say that, that's what kind of God's in the business of doing. He kind of redeems things. He makes things better than they ever were in the first place. So now I get to go training with the team. I go every week. When I say I train, I collect balls. I'm the oldest ball boy in the game. But yeah, I get to kind of hang out, and brilliant. I love it.
Do you feel like you built a good relationship with the other guys there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's just being kind of normal. Is not trying to hit people over the heads with Bibles. It's about being just able to be around and serve. I'm there to serve my club, so I'm there to collect balls. I'm there to listen when people are injured or just having a hard time. Just that's what I'm there for. Just as I am out here on the street.
For all those years since his Damascus Road experience, Dave had given himself to serving other guys as a prison chaplain, a football chaplain, and as a vicar of St James's Church on the Lockleys estate. It was a new life for Dave, but for every fresh start story, it's only so long before your old life comes back to haunt you. And Dave still had some old enemies in Bristol.
Gone up through the Iraqis, and to run in like 7 to 1,100 people every Saturday. I've been in trouble, I've been locked up, I've been to jail. But there's never been anyone hurt that didn't want to be hurt. No one with a scarf or a hat on got hit. No one that didn't want to have a fight didn't have a fight.
That was Mark Divvy Saunders, one of the leaders of the Bristol City gangs. As a die-hard Bristol Rovers fan, Dave and Divvy were great enemies.
Yeah, Divvy was one of our kind of enemies.
Me and Dave were great enemies. Dave's a Bristol Rovers fan and I'm a Bristol City fan.
The whole thing about Bristol is it's kind of divided by a river. And you kind of generally, if you're north, it used to be, you're north, you're Rovers, you're south, you're City.
We used to fight around the town, couldn't go in the same pubs, couldn't even walk on the safe pavement.
They hated us and we hated them.
Years into Dave's new life, he bumped into Divvy in a hospital. Of course, Dave was no longer interested in the football violence. But what was he going to say to Divvy now?
So one day I was in hospital and his son was in the same ward as me.
So I went into the hospital and in just across the way was Divvy laying on this ward and I just thought, oh no.
And he'd come in a couple of times before and I noticed him and I couldn't move because I had a tumour at the time removed. But he knew I was there and I knew he was there.
And he was kind of looking across and sort of smirking a bit. And I just was like looking, just thinking, just don't engage, don't get involved in that. Later on that day, I said to him, yeah, I know you. And he said, yeah, you know me.
One day, Dave came and said, I know you. I said, you know me, Dave. you know me, Dave. Or gas, I'm saying. And we struck up shouting. And I've known this man 10 years, we've been 10 years. And we just chatted. It's the first time we talked.
After years of fighting each other in and out of bars, Dave and Divvy struck up an unlikely friendship. And in the months that followed, that friendship meant an enormous amount to both of them.
Over the next couple of weeks, we got chatting about all sorts of things. Football was furthest from our mind at the time. Then we started talking about faith and things like this. And he'd become a minister. And I said, no, hey, get on your bike.
And then he was in an awful lot of pain. And I just kind of felt that I should kind of pray for him, really. So I prayed.
I had two things in my life which I can't explain to anybody. The day I met my wife and I had a feeling in here to know this, it was the right person for me. People say that doesn't happen, but let me tell you, it does. I had a warmth feeling the day I prayed with Dave and the Lord come into my body. I don't care what anyone thinks of me or what anyone says about it. It happened.
And he came out of hospital. He got better for a bit. We stayed in touch. And then he got ill again.
Yeah, last May I was diagnosed. I had given 6 to 8 months to live with asbestosis lung cancer.
I just kind of felt, now's the time I need to tell him. He knows that I'm a Christian and he knows what I believe. I've been trying to explain to him. And I just thought, mate, you need to accept him. I want to see you again. I want to, I want you to be at peace. So we prayed. He became a Christian and then we baptised him.
That interview with Divvy was just before his baptism at Woodlands Church, the same place where Dave Jeal had his Damascus Road experience years before.
This is why I've come to ask to be baptised with my great friend Dave. You know what I mean? Which had always been my friend. Let me stress, one coloured.
God sees us all in the same light. He loves us all. And he kind of restores things that are broken and are damaged. He kind of puts together, but he puts them together puts them together in a better way than you can have ever imagined. And I think that's the thing, is just being willing to be used and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do? What is my part in this?
He's been there for my family. He's helped me through some real bad times.
I always think that my job is just being a signpost, really, saying he's this way. This is the way to Jesus. This is the way to freedom and peace. And that's all I'm to be. I'm
not frightened one bit. I really am not frightened of dying one bit. Since going out with Dave that day and feeling that, I've got the easiest job in the world. I know it's coming. There's nothing no one can do about it. I've got the easiest job. I'm going to meet a man that I look up to, I respect, I pray to. And knowing that what's on there is going to be looked after by him. And that's all I can ask.
A few months later, Divvy passed away. Dave baptised and buried his new friend, a friendship of former enemies, united by a higher calling than the colours of red and blue. At the next Bristol City match, thousands stood to applaud Divvy as shouts of Mark Divvy Saunders rose into a cold winter air. Dave continued to reach out to guys like Divvy, tough guys but tender-hearted, and not long after the prison chaplain became a football chaplain, the Rev Dave Jeal became a Royal Navy chaplain, and I caught up with him last week at the base of 40 Commando in Taunton. So, I mean, you, since the time when I interviewed you and you spoke about Divvy, I mean, that was an amazing story, and it feels like your life has continued in that sort of vein. You're reaching out to guys. I always call them tough but tender. Often the guys with the biggest biceps have also got the biggest hearts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you do that. You've been a prison chaplain, a football chaplain, a Royal Navy chaplain. And so now on 40 Commando, what is life looking like now as a Navy chaplain?
Well, it's really exciting. I do get to, go out with the lads and do some pretty crunchy stuff, which is fun. I love it. I think it's interesting that kind of God's given me my heart's desire, but not in the way that I imagined it.
Okay.
So, I don't ever carry a gun. And, I'm not ever going to fight in that way, but I'm there to support them, and wherever they go, I will go. Yeah. So I think that's a real privilege, and it's better than it ever could have been.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And so other people listen to this who, would want to catch that adventurous spirit that Dave Mitchell saw in you. I guess people want to reach out to other tough guys and people who need a bit of love. But sometimes people don't quite know where to start. What advice would you give to people?
Well, I always think just be yourself. It's not about joining a club, because the church would be the worst club ever. It's not about that at all. It's about a revolution and about a life, but a positive revolution. It's about loving and caring. It's all about love, and that sounds a kind of a weak thing, but it's not. I think you've got to be strong to love and loving those who maybe don't understand you. It's, when I get Marines coming to see me, I'm not a Marine. I will never be as nails as they are. The stuff that they have to do for their training is ridiculous. I will never be one. But they know, well, hopefully they know that I care about them, I love them, and I am who I am. That's all I can be. If you try and be something you're not and pretend, you can't kid a kidder. And it doesn't matter. Some of the people that have kind of, spoken truth and love into my life and helped me to change are not kind of big roughy-tufty blokes who could have a row in the pub. They were not like that at all. And that's good, because, we don't need that. So, I just think just be yourself, just be genuine.
As my interviews with Dave drew to a close, I remember asking him in that first meeting back in Lockleys what advice he would give to someone who hears these stories and thinks, how do I find out if there's a God out there somewhere?
So if you don't know God, just say, okay, if you're there, show me. Because it amazes me, and it amazed me when I kind of did that. all the things that kind of happened. Now, you can put stuff down to coincidences. I don't believe in that. I believe that God wants us. He wants to set us free, and he wants us to be happy, and he wants us to share that happiness with others. So just give it a go. Find somewhere where it's happy, where there are people that are friendly and who obviously know God. You'll know them when you see them. And that's the most important thing, is kind of living the life now and keep going, because it's hard, but you won't regret it.
And keeping going is exactly what Dave Jeal has done. He never forgot his Damascus Road experience, where he'd gone to church to charm a lady and ended up encountering what seemed like the very love of God. And in the years since that moment, he's been a channel of that redeeming love to countless others in prisons and football stadiums and military bases, to friends, brothers, even former enemies. And that's the beauty of this story. A divine moment changing one person, who then reached out to another person, who in turn reached out to another person. And, well, who knows where this movement ends? Thank you for listening to the Lukex podcast. If you want to dig deeper into Dave's story and others like it, you can find them in the book Finding the Peacemakers by me, Dan Morrice, available from wherever you buy your books. If you want to see a short film of Dave and Divvy, check out Heaven's Hooligans on the Lukex Project YouTube channel, or just go to the website lukex.org. That's lukex.org. Thanks to the Rev Dave Jeal for his interviews, to Dave Mitchell for his insights on the community house movement in Bristol, to the family and friends of Divvy for his interview at Woodlands Church, and to 40 Commando for letting this civvy onto their military base for an afternoon to interview Dave. In the next episode, I sit down with Emma and Chris Simmons to hear how the community house story became, well, part of my own story. And don't forget, if you're enjoying the Lukex podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and follow us on social media. All the links are on the website lukex.org. That's lukex.org. Thanks.